Let's see. Let's see. Oh, I think we're live now. Just over here enjoying myself while the ethers are connecting us. Oh, goody. I'm always interested what the time that the powers of the universe choose for us to connect. So fantastic. Akasha here. Nana Akasha, namaste. Thank you for joining me. So I'm really excited because, right, we had the new moon, and I hope you watched it. If you didn't, there's a lot of empowering processes in that. And we discuss a lot of really powerful things. Of course, we're still feeling the new moon. And the asteroid goddess of spirit medicine, she's still here. We're having all kinds of harmonizing cosmic shifts all week long. And woo, the Lion's Gate is coming. So Thursday, we're going to be together here, having a really incredible Lionsgate activation and celebration. So be sure you join me for that, and subscribe below and click for notifications and share this with everybody that you can think of so we can create that critical tipping point for bringing everybody up and out of a world perceived to be negative. I actually had, so today we're talking about trauma and emotional freedom. Why? Well, I don't really subscribe to a lot of conversations that become popular in the world because they are done in a way that are not contributing to freedom or healing. They're done in a way to keep perpetuating the problem. So, war and violence and hatred births more war and violence and hatred. There isn't any other way around it. Okay. You can't say, I am going to birth something full of love and peace by being angry and violent. Okay. So you can pretend and you can keep pretending, but trauma has become a conversation that when I grew up, you didn't talk about your trauma. You didn't talk about your problems. There weren't labels for all this stuff. There wasn't a new disease on TV every day with the doctors pretending to recommend that you should go ask your doctor for this medicine and this pill and that pill that will then completely destroy your body's ability to create its own pharmaceuticals and find its own healing path. So be careful in your choices because it's really easy to go with the flow, to be one of the sheeple and to just say, oh, everybody else is doing this. Everybody else is eating this way. Everybody else is watching this show. Everybody else is scrolling on Facebook and TikTok all day long. Why can't I? Because you're conscious, because you want better, because you don't want to live in trauma, because you don't want to hand away your power. And yet when you tell people they can take their power back, they really are afraid to. They might say, over here, I wish I was free. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. And then over here, they're like, oh, well, I'll never have it, or people don't like it, or there's turmoil in my life when I try to change. So I'm just going to stick with the status quo or keep hiding. So why is it important to say, okay, let's pull trauma out? It's not really in the closet anymore. It's like probably every summit that I've been invited on this year has trauma somewhere in their title. Great. I'm glad that we're addressing it. We're talking about it. Lots of people are out there giving you different perspectives of it, different solutions of it. This is helping to free the way I was raised, which was you hid all of your perceived limitations. You didn't let anybody know that you had trauma. You certainly didn't walk around with a big badge saying, I am a trauma victim. And yet there isn't anything wrong with saying, well, I have PTSD. It's that if you just accept that as a sentence and a prison, then now you're stuck there. And then what? Is that the life you came here to live? No. I can promise you, I have never once in 38 years of looking into people's souls ever once seen my sole purpose and the blueprint I created is for me to be a victim of trauma and never have what I want and never follow my bliss and never be happy and always kowtow to everyone else. No, that is not ever part of your soul desire. However, if you are experiencing that, it doesn't mean you're wrong and you screwed up and you're being punished or you are somehow not good enough. That's not true either. Okay. So one of the things that we really want, hey Josie, is to recognize that, yeah, we have trauma. So I have written so much on this topic just in the last week alone. it blows my mind. It's just pouring out of me, pouring out of me. I was up till 2:30 in the morning, and I used to stay up all night long. I don't do that anymore. Really doesn't agree with me in general, but when you have the moons, the new moons or the eclipses or the equinoxes or the full moons, I have very different patterns to my energy, and I'm very grateful to be able to go with the flow. Now, it didn't mean that I didn't have this appointment today, and I did give myself some space this morning to sleep in versus getting up at 4:30, 5:30, 6:30 that I usually do. And yet by 7:30, which is what, 4 hours of sleep or something, 5 hours maybe, I was wide awake, and all of the downloads are happening. So I go into, oh, good, this is what I'm meant to do. I was up writing, I was talking, I was weaving these different ideas together. It was phenomenal. And I get guided, right, to different things. So I love Joseph Campbell and The Power of Myth and The Hero's Journey and the wisdom, 1111, that this man had by studying the myths of all cultures around the world, from religions and creation stories to archetypal conversations, and going and witnessing and seeing the rituals, the coming of age, the initiations that many cultures have had and some still do. Some of them pretty traumatizing, we would think, right? And yet the mindset that you choose completely determines the outcome of that experience. So if you go on a vision quest, like my dear friend Christian, who is Aztec and was sent when he was 14 with nothing, not a knife, not a bottle of water, not a blanket, not nada, 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 okay, into the wilderness for 4 days, I believe, to survive. And of course, you are in some way prepared by your teacher and your fairy goddess mother or someone. However, this is when you go into the cave that you fear, the cave of your dark shadows. This is when you go into your underworld. This is when you get stripped bare like Inanna and walk down into the deepest depths of what you fear, because what you fear is part of what keeps your trauma stuck in your emotional field, keeps the mindsets or beliefs hanging on. Well, what if they're right? Or what if I believe in something better than this and then I get traumatized again? And, what we've forgotten is that we are masters of choice. I can choose in this very moment to stop doing that, stop thinking that, stop being that, stop having that. And then if I don't go back to it, I can make another choice. So there isn't the, oh no, what if I made the wrong choice? You make the choice and you move forward, and then you make another choice and you make another choice. And every minute, every second, you may be making a new choice. Trauma makes us feel like we can't make a different choice, that there aren't other options available, that we're not strong enough, that we're too weak, that we've had these things happen to us, that we can't trust others, that we can't trust ourselves, that the world is dangerous. And then the trauma keeps a particular density, a particular state in the cells, and the cells radiate energy. Okay, you have an electromagnetic field and it can be measured easily. Everything is energy, everything is thought, consciousness that has a radiation field, that has a frequency. So depending on if you want to go into quantum physics or mystery school teachings or how you want to perceive this, you can have the experience of trauma, and it doesn't have to become your lifelong label. It doesn't have to define your choices, who you live with, who you love, the job you take, how much money you make, and yet that's what's happening. So our perception that I'm not good enough, or I can't ask for this, or what if I have and people don't like me then, and the trauma of being rejected or being told no, or being told that you can't have, or who do you think you are? And so when I started writing last week, the power of what began to happen was truly amazing. I was writing a process for my mastermind. Hi guys. And it was about feeling, and feeling is the secret. Feeling is the secret ingredient. And what are you feeling? If you're feeling traumatized, if you're feeling less than, if you're feeling a victim, abandoned, abused, if you're feeling it's not fair, if you're feeling resentful, What are those doing? They're sapping your energy, and they're telling your field, they're telling your higher self, they're telling your guides, they're telling all this infinite wisdom, knowledge, strength that you have, you came with in your soul blueprint to be something bigger than you've ever been before, but not because you're trauma free, not because everything in your life unfolded perfectly, not because you have all the money. In fact, those are all ego wants, and you can have them and enjoy them. But when you identify by them, when you identify that I am my body, if it's fat or if it's thin or if it's young or if it's old, or if you have the perfect house or if you have the perfect car, and what will other people think? That's the danger. It isn't having something. Have all the money you want, but don't think that that's the solution and now you're safe and now everyone will like you and nothing bad will happen again. Spirituality is the same thing. I'm on my spiritual path. It is number one to me. There's nothing more important in my life. I wouldn't go 1 minute without doing my spiritual work before this call, activating my light body, clearing and cleansing, weaving, asking to be brought into the center, creating the infinity healing chamber so that you and I enter into a sacred space together. And this space between the worlds is free from the density and the fear. And if the more you relax into the moment and free yourself of, even for a few moments together, right, of what will happen next, or I have to have this really scary conversation, or the IRS is after me, or what if I don't get the money, or, why did I make that mistake, or I should have chosen something different. Staying in the past, worrying about the future takes you out of the present. The present is where everything is. It's where peace is. It's where happiness is. It's where joy is. It's also where trauma is, if you are continuing to identify with it. So we're encouraged to identify with our trauma. We're encouraged to have a label. We're encouraged to, I have a daughter who has a lot of anxiety and other issues. And I could see this when she was a baby very easily. And instead of marching her off to the doctors and starting to get labels for her, I could have easily, I'm sure, have many of people given her many labels and decide they wanted to give her many drugs. I was not that kind of person. I didn't vaccinate my children. Yes, I did not. And guess what? They were the healthiest kids in school. They never threw up until they were in college, not once. They didn't get any weirdo diseases. They barely ever got sick. And I cured them of asthma and allergies, which came from their birth mother. And so I know, and I have seen, and I have gone through personally and helped other people around the world heal gangrene, prevent amputations, transform complete belief in what one of my clients was basically told, you're a piece of shit, you're worthless, you'll never have anything, and believed it and was living that life out. You can live out the life of your trauma, and you can choose not to live out the life of your trauma. Is it easy? Not really, because it requires you to get out of your comfort zone. And it sounds weird, but when you become a healer and you start seeing, look, I'm freeing you from all this trauma and all this pain. You don't have to have this disease anymore. You're getting better. And you see people start to get better. And then all of a sudden they hit a wall and they're like, oh my God. And they may not even be aware, but their subconscious says, oh, well, if I'm not weak anymore, then people won't take care of me. Or if I make my own money, then this person won't give me money anymore. Or if I do this, then maybe I won't be loved, or people won't want to support me, and so on and so forth. And some of that is true. Some people don't like you if you're happy. Some people don't like if you are becoming empowered. They want to bully you. They want to repress you. They want to criticize you. They want to outcast you. Okay, because you can't change them anyway. You're here to find the density in your field and free it so you can become enlightened. A process of ascension is becoming lighter. Acceptance is forgiveness and harmony and compassion and transcendence. And transcending trauma is a powerful process that is so sacred and so I'm really hesitant to say that. Oh, so the overlighting deva of healing is here. Thank you, sweetheart. And she wants me to say bliss. So your trauma is your door to your bliss. And I know there's going to be people that are going to be mad about that because they're so densely attached to the identity that they have or the limits that they have around it. Well, I'm not free from trauma, but I I was told not to feel sorry for myself at the same time, sort of being criticized a lot. So why aren't you this way? Can't you do better? If you combed your hair like your sister, would you look nice versus the natural curl? I mean, literally everything from weight, body, hair, to personality, to being too spontaneous, too happy, too trusting, too willing to tell other people that they could be free from their prisons and let's go have fun and don't live in your depression, and being criticized for all of that too. So what happens? Do we hang on to the trauma? Do we hang on to what everyone else thinks is true? I have clients who have gone the other path. They have taken that path less traveled, so to speak, and they've healed themselves from cancer. And they did it with their doctor bullying them and their family rejecting them and people who think they were being loving constantly projecting their negative outcomes. Or what if you do this and you die? Or what if this happens? Or what if that happens? And we don't respect each other's choice. And we've been taught to reinforce the trauma because it's easier to stay hidden, to stay quiet, to stay powerless, to go with the flow, than to create the powerful, passionate, blissful life that you were designed to. So trauma is something that lives in our field. Your light body consists of your physical body, your physical etheric body, or what we call your aura. That's the field immediately around your body that has a lot of power and a lot of density because we've ignored it, and it's sort of a trash dump in a way. All the way down to the cells and the cellular memory and the DNA, and even deeper and deeper and deeper into electrons, protons, and then into the infinite space, because you're mostly just space, because you're mostly just thought, because you're not really a dense thing. You're an illusion of the projection of what you believe to be true of yourself. The cool thing about this is that this is where your power lies. And when you decide, I'm taking back my power, how are you doing that? Are you going to march up to people and tell them off? Maybe that's appropriate. Maybe it isn't. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Okay. Are you ready and willing to walk into that cave where your deepest fears are? That part of you that's afraid to be the creator, afraid to be the artist, afraid to be happy, afraid to follow a path that other people don't understand, and even you don't know where it's going to lead. And yet, when you listen to Joseph Campbell, and he says, after years and years, there's never been, unfortunately, he's not alive, or I would seek him out and try to spend time with him to just be in his aura, because he has wisdom from studying and reading all these myths. And then he's gone to these cultures and he's witnessed these initiations, and he's seen people who do something we would consider pretty horrific. And yet inside of their cultural mindset, it was an honor to give your life and have people eat you. It was an honor to go through an initiation and be scarred and be beaten or whatever other trauma. So like my friend Christian, he went out and had to face his fears. And did he survive? Yeah. And he's one of the most beautiful people I've ever met. I love to be in his presence. I love the retreats when we go to him, and we've co-created a ceremony, and he shows up with all of his Mayan dancers and the costumes that they make and the ceremony and the copal and the cacao and the feathers and the sacred place that we're at. And we pull together all these sacred aspects because we open the portals between the worlds. And what happens there? Quantum leaps. Your trauma is not something you have to take a lot of time to heal. It is a density living in your light body, your physical etheric, your emotional field, your mental field, your mind, your beliefs, your mindsets. Your emotion is your power. And yet when it's full of density, that is full of trauma, that believes that you're weak, or that other people will attack you, or that you're not resilient, or you're not strong enough, or you're not ready for it, or that it's scary, or what if you do it wrong, then it causes freeze. Okay. Not fight, not flight, but freeze. And that is the current pandemic, so to speak, right? Is an exhaustion of our adrenal glands, a depletion of our ability for our chakras to effectively ignite the proper frequencies in our glands that produce the hormones in our body to keep us healthy, to keep us sleeping, to keep us visioning, to keep us flowing. And trauma represses all of this. but it is a density that you can perceive. And you can perceive this density because you are designed as a multidimensional being. So you may perceive your physical body, and sometimes you can sense your emotions. Pretty much we can feel those emotions. Sometimes they pow, punch you in the stomach. I used to feel it all in my solar plexus. Somebody said something that I perceived was cruel or mean or rejecting me. Pow! I felt it right in my solar plexus. Ugh. If I looked at my bank account during my divorce and I was negative $100, pow! Right in my solar plexus. Ugh. And all my energy would drain, and all my focus, and all my positivity, and all my spiritual work would just fly out the window. And that trauma would come up and said, see, you're no good enough. You got disowned by your mother. Your ex hates you and is attacking you every minute because you wanted out of this marriage. Your children are confused and traumatized, and all these different things. And yet I watched my dear daughter as I raised her in a world that didn't label her. I didn't label her as an issue. I didn't tell her she had trauma problems. I could see her lives. I could see her night terrors. And I created spiritual solutions. I created an environment where she was accepted, where she could access states of bliss and joy and love, where she felt that she had control of her environment instead of forcing my opinion on her like so much parenting out there is. Let them cry and don't let them, don't coddle them. And, there's a balance of this dance of cruelty just because it's tradition, and listening, hearing, seeing past someone's trauma. Have you ever been beaten or criticized or bullied and then immediately told, don't cry? You can't cry. You can't express your emotion. You can't express the reaction to the trauma you've just experienced. And then you have to not talk about it and grow up and don't feel sorry for yourself and don't be vain, but be the best. And all of these catch-22s all over the place. So all those are breaking free. All those are falling off. We're sloughing off layers and layers and lifetimes of this stuff. And what's happening is that we can no longer carry the trauma because our higher states of consciousness are taking over. And those higher states cannot hold that density. So we're more aware of our trauma than ever before. Hence, the conversation starts to come up in more and more and more of the population. Now, just like everything else, you can see something as bad or good. It's two sides of the same thing always. All right. So this trauma happened. Is it bad or is it good? Well, initially, it requires some survival tools, right? Get out of the traumatic situation, get away from the killer, get away from the war, move away from the bully or the gaslighter or the critical people, get out of the workplace that condemns you or controls you or tells you you're not good enough. And what happened for my daughter was she lived a very magical life until she lived more with her father than with me. And he is depressed and he holds a lot of fear. And not that I didn't have any of that, but I have this other kind of medicine in me that is developed, of course, over many years, but is natural. And it's the state that I am here. It's part of my purpose. So when I follow my bliss, it's towards something that says there's a doorway inside of this pain. This isn't a wall. This is a door. And I maybe can't see that door right now, or I may feel blocked by it, or may feel stuck with this. And when am I ever going to get over wanting to please my dad, or wishing I had more of this, or blaming myself for this failure or loss of that, or why don't I have all these different things? Well, the bottom line is, are your thoughts and your feelings supporting your health, your empowerment, your higher states of consciousness, the parts of your heart that are calling you? Or is your trauma story, is your poor girl mind constantly telling you, oh, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, what if you mess it up? Who the hell cares? There is no such thing as doing it right. Right action, right mind comes from an inner place of self-acceptance. And that self-acceptance says, yeah, I have trauma. And so last week, when I started to just download this process for my prosperity mastermind, and it went from like, what are you feeling? And what are you feeling when you go to sleep and when you go into a meditation? And yeah, you go into a meditation or an activation with me and you change your state. You could be in the lowest possible state of wanting to die. And you could rise up to such a high state that you couldn't even imagine how you felt 30 minutes before. However, those are the realms of the divine feminine, and the divine feminine is pure receptivity, accepts you, doesn't judge you, and will create whatever you are feeling. So when we go into states and we go in as the trauma person, we want to bring it in as, look what I found, not look what I am, right? And Josie said, I have so much trauma, it seems like it is never going to go away. Exactly, right? It's defined you and it's reinforced you. And then you started to wake up and you started to realize this isn't normal. This isn't okay. I'm not staying with that person. And you got out. I'm not talking to my family about that because they're not supportive of that. I'm not going to try to judge them and change them, but I'm going to live my own life. So every single choice you've made, Josie, has been towards your freedom path. And your trauma is still the identity that's dense in your field. And you're coming to the Intuition Awakening Summer School. So, what we're going to do in there is perceive the density of the trauma. And it isn't like 1, 2, 3, bang, let's get our wand out, bing, bing, bing. And yes, that can happen. However, trauma is something that has defined you, that has dedicated its energy to attempting to keep you safe from more trauma, therefore denying you access to opportunities that are coming in all the time. When we follow our bliss, doors are there that we didn't know would be there, that we couldn't begin to perceive or project or imagine that will be there. It isn't until you follow your bliss and then you realize, wow, I don't even know what bliss means or how it feels. So I better start to cultivate some sense of what that feels, because what am I feeling? And what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking is telling source and goddess and my body and everything else what to give me in my reality. And then I'm radiating that from every level of my light body. And that trauma is creating more trauma, or it is creating the lens or the glasses through which you see your life. So you get so far and then something comes up. I thought it was over, and I can say the downs are getting further and further apart. And now I can see through some of them. Exactly. So here's the attachment that you've got. Thank you for sharing so much, Josie, because this is going to help so many people. You get so far and you think, wow, I'm doing great. I haven't been traumatized by that. I haven't, been attacked by a bully recently, or money is flowing and showing up in many different ways. And then a big opportunity opens up, but it doesn't happen. Well, my daughter now is in the process of getting a job after 2 degrees and summa cum laude and perfect grades. And the idea of going into the world is creating anxiety. And so she has anxiety in the interview, and then she gets, like everybody right now, rejected just to even get to the interview. Then she has a good interview, but she doesn't get it, and she gets into a depression and she stays there for a week. So these are the habits that are living within us, and those are the things that we are looking for. We're not looking for the 3D outcome to be the only proof that the trauma is dissolving or transforming or shifting, or that we're getting deeper into the trauma to the door of freedom. I can promise you that when you enter that cave of your fears, when you accept who you are, what has happened to you, and you free yourself, you forgive yourself every moment for what you thought, what you felt, you forgive everyone and everything, no matter what, where, or how. Now you're not asking for that anymore. You're not handing your power away to anyone else anymore. And the next step for you, Josie, and for many of us, is now not to say, oh, I was doing so good, but now I forgot. Or like another person in our mastermind, right, who said, I do really well after these classes. I'm so up for a while. And then a few days later, I realized, when did I get off the path? Why am I back in stress and frustration again? Well, when you get to that point, don't take yourself deeper into a lower state and traumatize yourself by saying, oh man, I did it wrong. Why did it happen? And it's this person's fault, and it's that fault, and it's the system that crashed everything and canceled my flight, and all this stuff that happens in the external world. It's just happening. It's just weather. You can get upset with the weather, but do you really get upset with the weather the same way you get upset with someone else or yourself when they do say or act a certain way? You are not those people. And the trauma comes from many, many other lives. I can tell you that if there's any trauma that was birthed in this life, it is only because you decided to bring trauma from other lives, past lives, future perceived lives, and those are coming to a head. So we can't go forward. Let's say that you're moving into going to the Olympics, okay? And you're like moving towards practicing and you're getting in shape and you're fine tuning your craft, okay? Whether it's ping pong or gymnastics, whether it's like surfing, they've got all this wide variety of ways for people to express themselves and to look to achieve a level of mastery. And is it about getting the gold? Oh, it's wonderful. We love to see the story. I got the gold. I got 3 golds. I'm the hero. I'm on the TV show. It's 15 minutes of fame, baby. And then what? And what happens to those people who have those blissful big moments of superstardom? Maybe a few years later, you find them depressed and bagging groceries somewhere. And you're like, what? How'd that happen? Because they achieved that thing and now they don't know what to do next. And the trauma becomes, now who am I? And how do I sustain this? And people forgot about me. And when you fell in love and you got married, it was all about the bliss and the love and the potential. And when you fell out of love and you realized you changed and that you have this trauma from this relationship and you have to get out of it and you go through the divorce, you now see it as a negative thing. And you start to judge everything you did and everything you felt. You can't steal the moment of bliss and happiness. That moment is recorded in the Akasha as the bliss. Rewinding and looking at it from it's like looking at a movie from the 70s or our standards of what was acceptable in the 70s from our perspective now. It doesn't work, right? Misogynistic and sexist and racist and just a whole lot of shocking shit that was still going on even a few years ago. All right, so stop trying to judge the past and figure it out. Start being in the present moment. Stop being attached to, oh, I thought that was going to be permanent now. Nothing is permanent. And your story is rife with trauma. But does that make it bad? Mary Magdalene came through. The show is here somewhere. And it was fascinating to listen to her channel through me because she was like, isn't it interesting that people look up to me? And yet my life was pretty dang hard. It was pure trauma. Were there bliss moments? Yes. Was there moments of love? Yes. And yet, what was the outcome? Does that make me a bad person? Did I do it wrong? Did I ever once along that path say, oh, if I do this right, then everything will be perfect and I won't have to die and my loved ones won't have to die and I won't have to be persecuted and pursued and then blamed and have my true identity ruined through time and space and made infamous as what I wasn't? Does she live from trauma now that the church decided to turn her into a whore instead of a queen, into somebody who was subservient and not good enough, and from somebody who was the leader and the holder of the divine feminine for the idea that we are eternal and to manifest a life of that? No, she lived her life fully aware of her soul mission. And if you decide to become fully aware of your soul mission, you can go through your life knowing that there's going to be trauma, knowing that you have had trauma, and not letting it identify you, not letting it hold you back, and not letting it sap your power, right? So detach from the ego. That doesn't mean you don't have a personality. That doesn't mean you don't have likes and dislikes. In fact, please dive into your bliss, dive into your preferences, prefer something. I prefer not to be around a lot of people because most people are in unconscious states of toxic thoughts and uncontrolled emotions, and they don't even know it, and they're puking their energy all over. I'm not judging them, but I can choose not to be anywhere around them. I certainly don't listen to them. I don't tell them all my problems and expect their advice. I don't want their support. I'm much more interested in my own life. I'm interested in what's going on inside here. I'm interested in the doors to reality that I'm opening and seeing. And when I started to go into this exercise of how are you feeling, because feeling is a secret power, all of a sudden it was like trauma, trauma, trauma. And then I went, well, I don't really identify with trauma. Of course, I've had trauma. I had a daughter die. I went through a horrific divorce. I lost literally everything, including being disowned. I was given up for adoption. My daughter died. And it's just like I could label a million traumas. I've died 2 or 3 times and had near-death experiences. I've been through 3 surgeries. They were elective, but challenging, and on it goes. Do they get to decide who I am? Nope, not anymore. However, I was also given the realization, and then entire book came through me about trauma, and the new Intuition Awakening summer camp curriculum, and the practitioner training, the certification we're going to do in November, is going to center around identifying trauma by the density in the field, where it's held, what's the color, how do you perceive it, finding your senses to perceive it, and then transmuting it into the doorway to the power, to the strength, to the wisdom. Because the elders didn't become wise because they didn't ever lose anything. They did everything perfect. They made money and then just sat on their little throne in their perfect house and never had a single person disagree with them. That doesn't lead to change. Doesn't mean you have to have trauma to change. It means honor your trauma. Respect your trauma. Know that if you have certain kinds of trauma, that your soul designed this. And that means you also have the strength, you have the tools, you have the power, you have the wisdom, and you have the support to handle it. So I'm having to watch my daughter and my daughters move through their own traumas, move through their own wisdom. And I can sit now and hold their space and send them love and do the energy work with them and let them move through their life experiences, their own initiations. You can't take away the experience of having to go on a job search and go out and have those interviews. I can't do that for her. And I have accepted now that, oh yeah, I do have trauma from being criticized and told I was never good enough, or that I was wrong being just who I was as a child. I was to this and to that and everything else. I wasn't like the people that adopted me, therefore they thought it wasn't safe. So in their own way of love, they were trying to change who I was, which then basically told me I'm wrong in my nature, which added to all the past life trauma and all the soul contracts and vows that hold that deep, dark blanket saying, no, stay down here, don't speak up, please everybody else. Now we're waking up and there's no way not to wake up. So the trauma of your ego wanting never to have this problem again, or wanting never to recreate this issue, or saying, oh, I thought I was done with that. Why is the money not coming in? And you're staring at one way for the money to come in instead of getting onto the path of your bliss that has many, many, many doorways that lead to many, many more doorways. And those might include some more trauma that you have to face and find. So over the course of time on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I was going through realms and worlds, seeing the trauma in my body, in my mind, in my aura, in my cells. And it doesn't overwhelm me and it doesn't define me. And yet it is there deciding certain things for me. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not going to allow that anymore. Sylvia says, everything is just what it is and happens for us, not to us. It does happen to you, and it does happen for you. So you might lose your job and you were hoping to get a promotion or a raise, and suddenly you get laid off and you're sitting there confused and you're feeling sorry for yourself and you're going into your trauma story about, oh, I'm never good enough. And I was thinking about this. Why didn't that manifest? Clearly, I'm no good at manifesting. And this idea that we create our reality isn't true and blah, blah, blah. Right. And then what happens is, what if you losing your job is exactly the door that your soul wants you to go through because it is your shortcut to your next level of happiness or bliss or experience or wisdom? Because when you're older, you look back at your life and you don't see a bunch of failures and a bunch of confusion. Because when you're in your life right in this moment, when you're not a conscious creator, which most everybody hasn't been, you think that it's happening randomly, and this person said that, and that person said this, and I didn't do the right thing. No, it is always happening for us. And that might be taking us deeper into trauma. Oh, I just don't want to have that conversation. Oh, I just don't want that turmoil. Okay. If you don't want to follow your bliss, then don't look at your trauma. Then don't face the turmoil. Don't go into the dark cave of your fears, and stay there and be the person who said, I lived my whole life and I never did one thing that I desired, but I'm still alive. Now, hi, Lisa, these classes and all you have truly helped me recognizing myself and my trauma, and that my story is not necessarily who I truly am. I also see my child's trauma is deeper than her 4 years of life. Yes, right? It is. Because if she was born 4 years ago, she's a kick-ass friggin' priestess of the universe, right? If you're being born now, you're skipping a lot of the shit that we were born inside of. And yet, if we were born inside of that shit, I was born in 1960, so I've been through a lot of mindset shifts, a lot of technology shifts, a lot of belief shifts on the planet. I had to be born then because I had codes for me and for the world to help us get to this point. And the younger people, my kids are 27, your daughter's 4, they have a completely different set of codes. But every one of us is not a brand new, fresh being that has nothing. We are a soul full of all kinds of lives that had all kinds of broken hearts, all kinds of deaths, all kinds of betrayals, all kinds of abandonment, but also all kinds of wisdom and bliss and miracles and amazing. It's all there, and it's all for us, one side or the other. So easy to look at things in your life that at the time you thought this is great, that later turned out to be not great, in your opinion, like a marriage, and maybe a job or a loan to your house is a great way to look at your money story that doesn't support you, your trauma story around money, worthiness, wealth. How hard is it to get? How long does it take? Do you have to do it in the way everybody else does it? Can you make money on your own? Are you worthy of it? Are you a good manager of money? And blah, blah, blah. Those stories are very, very traumatic. And when I had a fashion design business and did $1 million in sales in the first year, and 3.5 years later, I had to close it because nobody was paying me and everyone went bankrupt, including the department stores and the catalogs. I went through deep trauma. But where did the trauma go? Well, it was easy to say, oh, they didn't pay me, therefore this happened. But you know, and I know what happens inside here. I immediately looked within. Clearly, I'm the loser. I'm the failure. I fucked up. I made the wrong choices. What is wrong with me? Why can't I have what I want? I worked hard. When does it happen? And so on. But now, of course, that is one of my absolute favorite soul moments, because if I hadn't done that, if I had kept many of the different jobs or businesses, if I had stayed in my marriage, if I had not been disowned and now back together with that family, I would not be the person I am now. And I want to be this and much more. I am on a path of ascension that is minute to minute, that is moment to moment. So when they told me a week or so ago, get to deep dive into trauma, I'm like, oh, that's for other people, not for me. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sure. Of course, I have some residual trauma from when my daughter died. It took 8 years to get pregnant. I was the happiest pregnant person in the world. Oh, okay. If you've ever wanted to get pregnant or wanted to have a child, you know the roller coaster of that. All of these things We don't have to hold on to the trauma. Have you ever seen a deer eating happily in the peaceful moment, pure and gentle and blissful, wouldn't attack anybody, wouldn't kill anybody, no matter what you did to it? It would never turn to violence or blame. And then suddenly, woo, a hunter comes and they sense the danger and they run, they react. They react from their glands, they react from their subconscious, they react from their body's truth, and they run. And then 10 minutes later, they're in a different field, peaceful and calm and nibbling on the flowers, enjoying the butterflies. They're not sitting there and going, oh my God, someone tried to kill me. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Oh my God, I have to change how I think. I have to do it. And they're going to walk around their whole life until they have arthritis and they're full of fear and they hide in the dark and they never go out and they don't have a child. They don't do that. They will never do that because they don't hold on to the trauma and make it mean something. So this is not to say that if you have been abused verbally, mentally, emotionally, sexually, that if you have been bullied and gaslighted, that you have been criticized and you have been burned at the stake and had your head chopped off and had all your money stolen and on and on and on and on and on. I thought I had finally done the responsible thing. I brought someone into my business. I was going to brave that partnership that had never really worked out. Partnerships in business are worse than marriages. They're very difficult. And the only person I have successfully been in business with is Chris, and it's bliss. However, I met somebody, they had the same vision. We expanded each other's vision. We had this co-creative thing going on. It was amazing and they were amazing. And we were like, okay, yes, let's do this together. And we launched and I got on stage and I was on all these big stages and I was selling these packages for $15,000 and people were signing up and people were getting money from their IRAs and everything was like, yes. And then it was like, guess what? My children are safe and they're living near each other and near my parents. And we can finally start to live around the world again the way we want. And we got rid of everything. And I spoke at a couple events and I had everything set up. The funnel was going to feed us clients and we had people and it felt so responsible that I had built this business in the traditional and responsible way. And the whole fucking thing fell apart in the most epic and ugly and disgusting way. Suddenly, all the people that I knew in this industry who knew this person was a con man and didn't tell me suddenly started to show up. But only after I saw through the veil and started to go, this doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up. Why don't you have this? When are you going to do that? Can you really provide this? Because I'm the one on stage saying, we're going to do this for you and we're going to do that for you. Well, this was a trauma of a different kind. And I used to say, and I don't claim this anymore, that the stress that I felt for that 4 months and following year or two sucked years off of my life force, off of my lifespan, because I had a duty to do what I said I was going to do. And I was going to make it work. And I was going to figure it out. And so I said, no, I'm not working with you. I am breaking this up. I'm taking my business back and I'm moving forward. And Chris, who's very soft-spoken and very loving, but not weak, finally had to step in because this con man was like, if you've ever had a relationship with somebody who just keeps bullshitting you and they're really good at it and they know exactly what to say and exactly how to act and they can manipulate people and they can change things and make it look good while it's really bad. And finally, Chris just stepped in and said, this is over. Boom. Do not contact us. Do not come near us. And then from that moment, everything disintegrated. All the money disappeared and everything. And my psychic students were saying, I don't know what's going on over there with you, but we can all see it. And you are in a big breakdown. And I don't know how to help you stop it, but I just want to let you know. And all of a sudden, I'm at a luncheon. I'm speaking at an event. I'm walking on the beach with somebody that I know from this industry. And they start telling me, well, we knew he was a con man, but we didn't want to tell you. We knew that he's under federal investigation for the Canadian government. And, I just had to call you up and tell you, don't do business with him. Really? You couldn't have said that before? I'm not sure you would have believed it. Well, guess what? All of that was true too. I was high. I was creating my reality. I was believing this shit. So what happens from that? Self-doubt, anger, resentment. I did it the right way. Why isn't it working out? Now, instead of me getting on a plane and flying off to live my free life around the world with everything set up to feed the funnel and have a successful business, everything died. And I have $14 a day to live off of. How the fuck do I do that? So, was it a bad thing? No. I'm glad I didn't end up going any further down that path. I'm glad that it all fell apart. Could I say, oh, I wish I'd known sooner, or it's all these people's fault for not telling me? No, because I'm the only one in my reality. I'm the only one that can choose to make that a bad trauma or make that an opportunity, like a vision quest, where you have to go out and you have to face your fears, and then you have to face the part inside of you that says, you're the loser. You caused it. You shouldn't trust yourself. You can't go out there and do these things. It will never work out for you. And then you can sit in your misery and create more misery for the world and for your bank account and for your family and for the earth and for your dogs and for everyone else you live with. Or you can choose to get up and say, I am not trauma. I am divine. I can walk through this. I have emotional freedom tools and techniques. And that's what I want to give you, is this whole new level that I've been shown of taking the wisdom that I have and the tools that I have to a new level of opening you to perceive density. This is a very different way of using your intuition. You're going to access and open all of your intuitive skills that are ready for you. However, this is going to help you perceive where, how, what's the sense, what's the color, what's the harmony, what's the frequency, what exacerbates it, what calms it, what hides it, what brings it to the surface. What do you do when your trauma comes back up? Judge yourself, get depressed, get frustrated, go back to old habits, hide, back down from what you want? Or do you keep following your bliss because you know there's another door that's going to open, and who the hell knows where that's going to lead you? Well, do you think that right now, if you've been around here for very long with me, that I'm really happy I ended up here in Mayan land? It's 9 years later and I still live here. I live in a different part of the Yucatan than when I first came, but I met Christian. I met my Mayan friends. I met myself in other lives as a Mayan priestess and other things. I met the jaguar spirit that I'm now a medicine woman for. I met a part of me that I didn't remember existed. I met the part of me and Chris that have soul lives together here as Mayan brothers. That is a stronger bond of love than I even feel for him in this life, and went in and strengthened that. And there was trauma in that life. He and I were brothers, and we were at Koba, and we were learning the mystic arts. And we were kind of teenagers, and we were kind of brash, and he was the outgoing crazy one and I was the more reserved one. But we would go and move the bricks like a Harry Potter thing, on the side of the temple. And I've been to this temple, and I immediately, the first time I went there, I knew none of this. I just came and went, that looks cool, let's go there. I love pyramids. And I'm walking by this temple, and it isn't a main temple at all, and you're not supposed to go up it. And I'm like, I look at the girl that I'm with and I said, I have to go up there. And she goes, let's do it. We climbed over the fence, and we went up there, and we hid at the back of the temple, and we got out our candles and our crystals, and we did our activation, and I did an initiation. And then I went up the Great Pyramid with Chris on the next visit. And we sat there with tourists tromping around us and talking in German and every other language and saying, what are we going to do for lunch? Having no respect, not being present at all in the divine energy that they had access to, because you can't climb that pyramid anymore. So the people who got to go there before, too bad that they didn't appreciate what they had in that moment. Could I be distracted with that? Could I be frustrated? These people aren't being respectful. They're not being sacred. They're interrupting my meditation. Sure. But guess what I learned? I want to be in situ. I want to be in these power spots. I want to be where my ancient self was, where the stones speak, where the land has the ancient currents, because of course that's why people built these things there. Whether it's a church or a temple or a pyramid, whatever it is, they knew these are where the dragon layers were originally. They all knew this were power spots where you heal or you cleanse or you travel or you open portals. Is there trauma to remembering your past? Sure. Sitting there with all that going around me, I went so deep into this life with Chris and I. And one night we would break into the school and we would practice the mystic arts, and we would travel dimensions, and we would do a lot of transfiguration, shape shifting, literally changing our body into different animals and things. And when I went there with my first retreat, everybody had a past life experience there that later at lunch they all shared independently, and we all realized we were all there in school together at one point. And I remember walking down the hallway and seeing John, one guy who came to 5 retreats, in there becoming some big whale or platypus and flopping around on the floor, and somebody else practicing this and that. And what happened was that Chris and I were Mayan brothers, and we were learning these mystic arts, and we had big visions and we had big desires, and we knew that we had powers and that we had access, and we understood time. And as a Mayan in that time, we understood we were spiritual and physical. We lived in both worlds, and we were ready to change the world. And one night he came to me in his spirit body and said, I'm drowning. And there's huge lagoons next to Koba where the crocodiles live. And he had gone down in his physical body underwater to practice breathing underwater, which is a magical technique. And he got caught on something, a rock or something. And he realized he wasn't going to get free, that his body was going to drown. So he came to me in his spirit body, which of course was something we knew. I do this with Brittany, with a lot of you, a lot of my clients. And I went to him, and in my spirit body, I was there with his physical body, and we held each other's hands like this, which is, by the way, a secret handshake or recognition of your sacred brothers and sisters. And we looked in each other's arms. And as he was dying, we said, this is not over. We will be together again, and we will complete this work. And now we're here. That was pretty traumatic. But look at what's happening now. Now we're together again. Now we have a house on the beach. Now we have these 2 beautiful cats that are familiars, that are healers, that are Mayan goddesses and fairies beings. Now I take people to these places and they have awakenings. Now those traumas help me understand what it's like for you. So everything can be labeled good or bad, and that's up to you. It is an earth classroom, but it's also something that we're creating. So we're not here to be punished, and we don't have to finish the curriculum we started out on. We can decide to time shift. So the other thing about emotional trauma is that, and trauma lives in your mind too, of course. It lives in your vision. It lives in your finances. And this is what we want to do. We want to free the emotional field by sensing the density. And this is what we're going to do in intuition school starting Saturday. And then we're going to free ourselves from those contracts, those vows that we made in this and other lives, to never speak up, to never do anything that could cause more trauma, to avoid people, to not trust people, to be afraid of money or power or light or whatever, or speaking your truth. And yes, there's still criticism. And yes, no, people won't agree with you. It isn't worth not following your bliss for, though, unless you want to just live this life out and come again, and live that life out and come again. And the worlds are separating. Many earths are being birthed right now. And the people who live in the pain and the war are in a different reality than I am. And do I look around and see the entire world manifested already into perfect happiness, harmony, lack of poverty, no more poverty, and all of that? No. But like Josie so wisely said, I feel good for a while, and then I see that the manifestation come back again, and then I judge myself, and I think that something's wrong, instead of like, oh, that was interesting, I'm going to take note of that. I went 3 days without feeling frustrated or without feeling pain or fear. I had 3 instances of money coming to me, or people seeing the true me, or synchronicities before I had a trauma response. Okay, good. I'm just the observer. I'm just the researcher. And then I'm going to bring the tools here. So You are here to learn, but you aren't the student, you're the teacher. And the beginner's mind and the student is teaching the wise elder, and the wise elder is teaching the student, and you're all of it at once. And if you identify and label yourself with trauma that says, I'm not good enough, I'm not doing it right, and there's a lot of time and money and space between me, and I have to learn all these different things, and I have to have all of these degrees, and I have to have all these things before I am good enough to declare myself trauma free, is going to take you forever. And I don't want to live in that timeline. So the next level is to find the soul contracts and the vows that keep those things stuck. And then those are also another level of density that your intuition needs to wake up to, sensing and perceiving density. Trauma in yourself and trauma in others. If you're carrying trauma in yourself, then you're attracting trauma and people who are traumatized. And it might feel nice momentarily to find someone who understands. I didn't want to talk to anybody when my daughter died. I said, fuck all you people. None of you know what I've been through. I just want to be inside of myself. And my husband at the time, my ex now, he wanted the therapy, and he became a grief counselor for the state of New Mexico because of this. And his body, he left his body and his purpose came into his body when she died. And he became a hospice nurse and eventually a director of hospices. So his purpose was birthed out of the trauma of losing a child. He knew who he was. Was it easy? Was it something you want? No. But he could have spent 50 more lifetimes waiting, or 10 more years waiting, but he got bam on his path because of that. When my daughter died, 1,000 beliefs died in that moment. I didn't have to work on this belief and that belief and that belief and this mindset. They all just friggin' shrunk. They burned up and then were rebirthed from the ashes, because the ashes hold the essence of the power, but no longer the form of the trauma. And we don't have to accept that trauma. We can be freed from it. Now, when I talk about timelines, more people understand that concept. How do you predict your future? How do you create your own reality? How do you get out of the repetitive patterns of the relationship or the job or the exhaustion or the disease or whatever it is you're living? You don't deny what you are. You just accept it. That means you notice it. You say, oh, okay, my phone cord is pink. Does it really make any difference? Well, I like pink, but if it was brown or black or gray, does it charge my phone or not? Okay, cool. So what do I want is something different than what I am now. And if I want it, then it's part of my bliss. And then my soul's already designed to have everything that it needs, that it requires in order to live that. So I don't have to wait. We talked the other day about wrinkling or crunching time. I don't have to work step by step through space time to get to this thing when I'm 50. Okay. I can take that point and this point and marry them together now. You could call it leaping, you could call it wrinkling, you could call it whatever you want, but the magic is within you, the tools, the wisdom, the knowledge of many lives, not just of the wound, but also the wisdom, because the wound and the wisdom are two sides of the same coin. The trauma shows you where your wound came in, and it was so powerful of an experience that it stopped you. And that stopping is where you look. Can I go deeper into it? Can I accept it? I was afraid of my first ayahuasca journey because I was quite certain that I was going to have to go back to my daughter's death as a spiritual experience and relive it. And I didn't want to feel that grief again. If you've ever lost somebody that you really love, the grief is intense and it's deep, but it's also a doorway. It's a trauma, and you can carry it forever. My ex had 7 sisters and brothers, and his closest brother in age, less than a year apart, developed brain cancer at age 13 when he was 14. And he built a bed in the living room for his brother to sit in until he died, and he died at home. Now, how each of the people in that family handled that trauma is different. Some people worked a lot. Some people became quiet. Some people went out and did drugs. And his father separated from everyone. He hated everyone. He internalized his anger and he never healed with it until the day he died. He was called I can't even remember, the old fart. I think they called him that. They even bought him a t-shirt. And when I saw him and met him, I saw a traumatized man who could not face the pain of what he'd experienced. So he just separated from ever having a close relationship with everyone, including his wife and his children. He worked 2 jobs. He was crabby towards everyone, and he never allowed himself to be happy. And he finished his life that way. It was a long time to live that way. So you have to forgive by accepting, and you have to transcend by accepting, and you have to harmonize with new opportunities to take that trauma and turn it into the medicine that is your power, so that you have the intuitive wisdom and the intuitive vision and the intuitive powers to dissolve that trauma. And then you'll see it in others, and you'll see it in the land, and you'll see it in a place, and you'll see it in a culture, and you'll see it in a gender, and you'll see it in a mindset, and you'll see it in a religion, and you'll start to see that trauma is embedded everywhere. But what if you didn't see it as bad? You just saw it as, oh, now I can see it. Now I can see the con man and make a choice. Now I can see the alligator before I get in with it. Now I can swim past the alligator. Now I can go through the vision quest. And they're pretty brutal, a lot of these indigenous, some still performed rites of passage. But if you were raised within that culture, maybe you were proud to be sacrificed because you were the lucky one. You were the honored one. You had achieved something in your life, and it was going to bless the world, and it meant new life for you at a higher level. It meant that now you were going to be the shaman, and you were going to go to a new state of consciousness. So it completely depends what you believe, what you choose it means, what you choose it believe, the beliefs around it, and the mindset. And unfortunately, we have lived for many centuries and many thousands of years in the dark. And the dark is dense. And it's been masculine power that says you're not good enough. And if you can beat it and you can achieve it and you can suffer and you can work hard and you can get, greed, grab, make it, store, and make myself really wealthy and have all my stuff, then I'm going to be happy. And then I'll help other people. It's 12-12. So we're coming into a paradigm that none of these old ways of perceiving yourself work. So you're not trying to fix yourself. You're changing what you believe about yourself. You're changing the role that you play. You're changing the labels that you've given yourself, and you're changing your relationship to time. Because space-time means there's space. It takes time to get there from here. It takes work, it takes money, it takes this, it takes that. Time, space is a structure that is free. You can travel to your past, review it. You can change it. You can forgive yourself and others. And suddenly the past is no longer the trauma that holds you back. It is the wisdom that frees you. You can see and feel and shift your timeline by perceiving the density of what you are projecting into the future. What are you radiating out right now? The trauma, the label that I am a victim of this, and that I am a not good enough of that, and that I am a failure of this, and that there's not enough of this, and that I can't have that, and that until this person dies or this person agrees or this person pays me my money back, I am not free. Those are all lies. You've chosen to believe them. Change what they mean. Change what they mean to you. Unhook the shackles. Then you have the energy, and the raw energy of that trauma is no longer molded into a form that holds you back, is no longer molded into a form that gives you arthritis or pain. I've had hearing problems my whole life. I've had tubes in my ears and allergies, and I had to take lip reading in grade school because it would just boom, I'd be in class and suddenly I couldn't hear anything. And then I was a swimmer and I loved swimming, but then it affected my ears, and on that goes. And now I just had my ear practically all chopped off. They cut it, boop, pulled it open, went up into my skull, pulled out a piece, cut out a piece of muscle, and that hurts more than that. Went inside there and put that new piece of muscle to create a new eardrum so that I can hear. And I know that this is a spiritual process that is repairing trauma from this life and other lives that is going to affect what I hear at an intuitive level. And I got new eyes by having cataract surgery. And I went through 6 weeks of not being able to see and massive fucking headaches like I've never had in my life. You could put 55 ibuprofen in there and it was like nothing. It was like a drop of rain on a wildfire. It didn't do any good. All of those traumas are not things I'm like, oh, poor me, I had this trauma. I'm like, wow, I can't imagine where this is taking me. Wow, my inner vision, my vision to see. The last night I was up till 2:30 in the morning and this information was pouring out of me and I was pulling follow your bliss and trauma and unicorns. Okay. And what else? Pulling all these different perceived different ideas and paths and beliefs together. And it was coming out of me. I'm talking and talking and talking and talking it into my phone and it's typing it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can see that. Oh my gosh, I see how these weave together. Oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. Oh my gosh. And it's because I've gone through the shit. And I didn't let it decide that I should just sit in someone else's life being miserable forever and giving up on my dreams. Nuh-uh. It made me get up again and again and again and again. And pretty soon in a few weeks, I'm going to get on a plane to England and I'm going to have the most blissful, magical, and amazing experience. And some of it I know, and most of it I don't. But what am I feeling about it? Am I feeling afraid that I'm going to be tired or afraid that I won't make enough money or afraid that this won't happen? Or am I going to feel the magic and I'm going to feel the doors opening and I'm going to say I'm following my bliss and that means only good can happen. Even if short term or one day seems hard and the next day seems magic and then the next day doesn't turn out the way and then this person doesn't show up the way they planned, do I surrender myself to those little actions? Or do I say in every moment, everything is for me, right, Sylvia? Everything is here for me. There is a higher power to my soul and to my purpose and to my codes and to my wisdom. And there are my other lives that aren't just wounded and wilting and weak. They also are wise and experienced and knowledgeable. And we're walking this path together now, and you and I are, and this community is, and this class is, and that retreat is. And the people that have appeared in my life since I said yes to this retreat blow my mind. I couldn't imagine not having Maria in my life right now. That's a trauma that I wouldn't want to imagine now that I didn't even know was on my path. Living over here safe, creating this beautiful environment so Chris could heal from his Kundalini awakening and seizure and come back into his body and be able to function. And he still only has 4 or 5 hours a day that he can function. And then he crashes. He just leaves his body and kaboom, he has to take a nap every single day, no matter what. His attachment to wanting to be what he was before finally occurred to both of us. That's not what we're looking to achieve. We're looking to go through this doorway. This doorway was opened. Is that a trauma? Watching him die? Watching him have this seizure, frying his brain and almost biting my fingers off because I put them in his mouth because he was choking to death and on and on. Was that a trauma? Yeah. Did I live worried every minute of the day for several years? Oh my God, what if he dies? Oh my God, what if he has another one? What if I don't do this right? What if I don't do that right? You bet your ass I did. But all of it has led us to a freedom. We were both workaholics. We were both stressed out all the time. We were more spiritual and more happy. And we were living here with new friends and Mayan magic and jaguars and all this amazing mystical things. And we were still carrying our trauma. We're still carrying our trauma from that time with the con man and the whole industry that stands up there and says, what's wrong with you? Do my program and you'll make $1 million. And then they get their students to lie who are about to go broke because they paid all their money to this coach that's lying that only that system has worked for them. But they tell you, well, it's clearly something's wrong with you. You should just get some help. And if you pay me and somehow magically, then you'll make money. I saw behind the curtain and talk about the Wizard of Oz as a nice ass dude compared to the people I was seeing. And I worked my way up. I wanted to be at that pinnacle and I was there on stage. And then I'm seeing behind the scenes and going, oh my God, you have no integrity. Oh my God, you're full of fear. Oh, you don't really have any confidence. It's all a facade. And the trauma from that said, fuck it, I don't want any of it. Like the trauma from my divorce. Oh my God, I owned 80 properties. I owned $1 million home. I had art. I had stocks. I had this. I had that. Pretty soon, 3.5 years later, I was bankrupt and homeless and didn't have 2 pennies to put together and disowned. Is that trauma? Yeah, lots of trauma. Do I talk about it? Yeah, only to let you know that I'm not over here going, well, I'm going to tell you how to deal with your trauma because my life is perfect and everything's been perfect. And I've always been with my love of my life. And I've always thought I was wonderful. No, 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 no. And the biggest problem with social media is all the posturing, all the influencing of bullshit lies. And of course, what are you going to do? Oh, I look pretty today. Oh, I feel happy today. Oh, there's a nice sunset. That's what you're going to share. Of course. But then you let that come in and seep into, wow, they have it good and I don't. I had a client once who I was jealous of. I was in a mastermind with her and she had a big, powerful internet marketing company take her on as a subject matter expert and basically make her rich and famous. They got her on stages. They got her reputation. They built all of her funnels. She didn't have to pay for the marketing. She didn't have to know how to do the marketing. She didn't do anything, but she lived in fear the whole time. She was terrified because they were making claims that if you hire her program, which they were promoting, you'll make $10,000 a month. And she would come to our mastermind and say, I've only done that a few times and I've only had 2 clients that did that, but now we're saying that. And now what if I can't do it? And what if this happens? And what if that happens? And then, well, they're taking so much of the money. And I'm like, yeah, because they're doing all the marketing and you're free to just show up on stage and show up and do your magic. I wish I had that. And I could see the value because I had been on the other side doing my own marketing, trying to take my 2 pennies and learn it and do it and this and that and get here and scrape and climb and build my business like that. And she was just gifted with something that then she never appreciated. And years later, she came to me and said, Spirit came to me in my meditation and told me I need to come and work with you. So we started doing deep spiritual work. And she told me one day, I see these women on Facebook and they're like, look at my engagement ring and look at my perfect fiance and look at my perfect butt. And I'm making $1 million and all this stuff. And why do they have it and I can't? No matter what I do, I never get to have what I want. And I looked at her and said, wow, you have a different perspective of yourself than I do. I live around very poor people who don't feel sorry for themselves. They get up, they're generous, they're kind, they give, they enjoy their day. And I know people who have beautiful cars and a beautiful home and more than enough money, but they're miserable and unhappy and they cry and they think that they're put upon and they think that they can't have what they want because it isn't the way that they want it. How do you perceive where you are? And what are you projecting into your future? Well, you can literally predict your future when you begin to sense density and frequency in the field. Because when you acknowledge and accept it, you now have the power to say, oh, wow, look, I have this big, giant blob of energy that's leading me down this timeline that's going to create more abuse, more trauma, more struggle with money, more self-doubt, more arguments with my spouse, more criticism from my parents, whatever. Because that's what you are making your trauma mean. Making the fact that these things have happened to you mean that somehow you're not good enough or you don't deserve or that that's what's going to happen. So it's a bigger picture that you need to look at than Pay attention to your thoughts. Thoughts become things. Pay attention to your feelings. They're the energy, they're the nuclear power that takes those thoughts and bring them into density, form, okay? And those are true. But then there's the whole wrapping, which is what are you wrapped within? And then you look over here and you say, this is the dream I want. I'm going to weave this dream. I'm going to come on this trip with Akasha. I'm going to take this intuition class. I am going to free this power within me to see these things. And guess what it means? It means I'm going to see more trauma around me and within me at first, because now suddenly I can see it and sense it. But then I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to be wise with it, and I'm going to talk to it. And then I'm going to realize it's a guide, and it has wisdom, and it has knowledge, and it knows where it came from, and it knows what I decided. And then I'm going to find the soul contracts, and I'm going to know where they are, and I'm going to unravel those agreements. And then I'm going to free that other life, and I'm going to free me, and I'm going to free every other life that has that wound. And now all of us have more energy to be present in this moment. And now all of us can go looking, where's some more trauma, man? I want more trauma. Where's that other trauma? I don't want to create more trauma. I want to find more trauma that I'm living with, because guess what? It's the juicy, delicious center at the life that I want, at the bliss that I'm looking for. Because everything you don't have, everything you think you want, is either ego and you don't really want it, or it's heart and you do want it and you already have it. And the only thing keeping you from seeing that you have it or knowing that you have it is your perception that this is bad and this trauma is holding me back. So sensing density in your thing over here, and you start to go into a meditation. Okay, I'm going to write out that I am taking this class, and then I'm taking the certification, and then I'm going to be a practitioner, and maybe I'll just apply it to my life and my family and my job and my money and my co-creations and my creativity and become an artist. Or maybe I'm going to become a practitioner and help other people, or bring it into my psychotherapy practice, whatever you want to do with it. And I'm going to go to Avalon with Akasha. And when I go there, I'm going to heal my blood and heal my body and connect to my lineages and open my magic and awaken the waters, the energies and the codes in the waters of the earth and in my body and in my blood. And I'm going to expand the time portals and download the highest level of divine feminine energy ever. And all these things are going to lead to my bliss. And then you get there and you look down that timeline with this new vision that you're going to have, because we're going to activate a third eye inner looking glass activation. And you're going to say, oh, there's only this little bit of density over here because I don't believe it's possible, because I've been trying to ignore it, or because I'm afraid to speak up, or afraid to ask for money or time off at my job, or whatever it is. And so I'm only really putting very much feeling and the things that I'll teach you, put the density over here. So the likeliness of that happening is very small, and the likeliness of this happening is very large. And therefore, when we keep pulling out the past and the pain and the trauma based on what it means from an abuse or something that was done to us rather than for us, and all of those things, then we're adding to the density and the likelihood of the future being the same or worse, the disease continuing to manifest in your body instead of recede. Do you know that people are going to seminars and coming out with proven scientific medical tests with their doctors of having some genetic disease that is incurable to not having it in a matter of 7 days? Because in 1 second, you shift, and then you decide, and then I'm going to show you how to send the density, how to manifest that density, how to attract more energy and frequencies to what you want. And then that becomes your ability to predict and choose your future and create your own reality. And when you get into that feedback loop, you don't get depressed if 1 minute you feel great and the next minute you're frustrated again. You're just like, okay, that's the process. Okay, if you've ever wanted to go speaking is one of the top fears of the world. And you couldn't have convinced me when I was younger I was going to be a speaker. If my life depended on it, I would turn red, I would stutter. I I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be focused on. I didn't want to be criticized. I felt unsafe, and I was in the back of my body trying to run away. And yet I was forced. I learned meditation. I'm like, oh my God, I have to teach this. So I would gather people at my house, and I wasn't even asking for money. And I was like, ugh. And then I would get on stage at the real estate investing conference because I was so good at it. And I took all these courses on it, and I just threw myself into it because I didn't know why. My soul just said, do this, do this. And I was facing my fear every day, asking people questions and making offers and going through, what if I'm laying awake every night going, oh my God, what if I lose everything? And up and down and up and down. Stop thinking it has to be easy and start saying it is what it is. Sylvia, it just is what it is. My dear, I guess I don't want to be personal. Someone very dear to me just lost their best friend very suddenly. Their best friend was only 30. They suddenly had a heart attack, went into a coma, and died within a day. The shock, obviously, is a trauma. The grief, obviously, is something that's very heavy. And yet already this person is transforming the trauma and the grief into a benefit to herself. She's already gone to her own doctor and asked, what about my lifestyle? What can I do to be healthier? I don't want to be 30 and have a heart attack. I'm going to change how I eat. I'm going to change the rest that I get. I'm going to change this thing that I do. I'm going to start to support myself. So the good that comes out of something that's traumatic is infinite, but it's up to you to see it and decide on it and choose it. So I have found my voice and I cannot shut up. Not everyone is happy about it. Oh my God, look, Sylvia, I'm so happy. I'm happening. I'm happy for it. Absolutely happy for it. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up. I want to give you a few things real quick. I want to just make sure I said hi to everybody. Oh, hi, Milwaukee. Lovely to be here with you too. Thank you. And I feel like my childhood trauma was part of the making of me as where I am now. Yeah, it's true. I'm helped me to understand who I am truly and how not to be. Exactly. And one of the first things I did when my life fell apart, my business crashed, I had no spiritual backup, and I was wandering around going, what's different? I just have to find something completely different than the way I was raised, because that clearly didn't work. Was that I wanted to read biographies. I read the Shirley MacLaine book, Out on a Limb, and it introduced me to spiritual concepts like astral travel and past lives and all kinds of crazy stuff I'd never heard of. But also, it was a story of her trauma and her triumph. And Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen and all of these people. And then I realized one day, the people who I looked to for spiritual advice didn't have an easy childhood. Wow. How many people do you see go to the Olympics and they tell their story of poverty and trauma? And they rose out of it because of their passion to become a basketball player or something. Our trauma doesn't define us and imprison us. Our trauma inspires us and offers us a doorway. Discovering your trauma more and more, Lisa, as I parent, because I get triggered again and again and keep wanting to break the cycle of my trauma gets in the way and I feel like I need to break open. Parenting is very, very challenging, and it's a good thing. It is a path of immense power, and motherhood, fatherhood as well, but motherhood is wanting to be a perfect mother, wanting to be a different mother than the one you had, reminding you of the trauma that you had, reminding you what you didn't get, watching your mother come out of your mouth, or I still occasionally am shocked, but I hear my sister, who is very cruel and mean, come out of me. She had no tolerance, and I had bad hearing. So if she said something and I said, what, she'd get pissed. And she'd yell at me and she'd attack me. And if I said what twice, well, then all holy hell would happen. And so I just learned I don't know what she said, to move on. Occasionally, I hear her come out of me with Chris. when he doesn't understand, when he's in his fuzzy state, we call it, when he's used up the capacity his brain has to track what I'm saying or to understand English. And this is a daily thing that we go through. Yet his ability for art, for creativity, for writing poetry has expanded in ways that he never expected. And so everything has that silver lining, and inside of it, the trauma is a house or a door that can take you into it. And you want to be the perfect parent, and yet you have to trust your daughter. You have to trust your children, that they have their own soul blueprint, that they have their own traumas, that yes, they will live through. And what you can do is hold space, that you see them, you love them, you accept them for who they are. And then you keep working on your own trauma to model that, right? So, all right, good. So I want to quickly share, I'm not going to share all of the slides that I wrote up for you because we've talked about most of it. And I do want to share, this was today's graphic. This is some art that Chris created for me. And the way that it came through, it felt like both the darkness and the light and the interplay of worlds, and the trauma being both a field that's keeping you hidden and fuzzy and also protected. And yet the connection is there. Look at the winged ones that are here. So emotional freedom is a choice, and trauma is what you decide it is. So coming on my retreats, coming on, and please reach out as soon as possible for all of these. Signing up for this, we still have the sale on. $64 a month for 6 months is really something that I know is within your reach, and you can become the manifester of this trauma freedom. So when you ignite your intuitive intelligence, the outer manifestation of your inner journey, right? What we've been talking about, the reflection of your reality, of your inner journey, is the intention not to teach you. I am going to provide you information for your mind. I like to balance. I like to give your logical mind things to understand, and then I like your intuitive side to come forward. But I want to inspire you to directly discover your true nature, because your destiny is here. It's walking alongside you right now. Anytime that you're ready to see it, to be in the fully present moment, takes courage, and it takes choice moment by moment. You hear its knock sometimes. You don't hear it. You're afraid to listen. You deny yourself it. You sabotage it. You accept it. It is what it is. But your choice is yours. So understand the guidance and follow it is what I want to take you to. Know it or not, you are on a wave of multidimensional spiritual awakening. This is a journey of oneness. It means unity is happening right now. Reuniting with your truth, reuniting with the power, reuniting with the healing and the power, right, of Chiraclo or Chiron, the wounded healers, and the spirit medicine sister. The wounded healer is your masculine, the spirit medicine that you require is the feminine, and these are here right now for us in this new moon, in this Lion's Gate, in all of these things that are coming forward. The quest for ascension, the quest for your soul, the quest for the Holy Grail is the quest for your creative powers to clear and cleanse and hold the chalice of your creative powers. That's your intuitive gifts. The power is to recreate what it means. What does the trauma mean? And then to sense it. So when you raise to these higher states of awareness that I'm going to take you to, you're free from trauma. You're free from pounds. That's an interesting thing. You're free from pounds. You're free from limits. You're free from fear. And then if you go back into the fear, it isn't time to say, well, that didn't work. It's time to say, great. I practiced. I went to the gym and I can lift 1 pound. Now I'm going to keep going back. I'm going to feel tired some days. I'm going to feel on fire some days, and I'm going to go up to 2 pounds. It's no different. Okay, because trauma has this unique density, feeling, and sensation that weighs down your energy, your clarity, your wisdom, your willingness. It's a habit. And the habit is what we want to break free from. The habit to shrink or feel weak, to hold yourself back, because the patterns have a higher sensory power, a healing power, to give you superpowers, supernatural powers, that isn't something that will come from the beliefs that deny yourself and staying invisible. So when you accept your soul is perfectly prepared, you already have what you need to handle this trauma. You aren't somebody who's weak, and you don't have to be at the mercy of anyone else. You do not have to. And if you see yourself fall into that trauma again, just come out and say, okay, one more time, got it. Because you feared and forgotten your intuitive gifts. The uncertainty says, maybe I shouldn't trust myself, maybe I should stay safe. And the trauma response causes the self-doubt, the poor mind, and the self-sabotage. So this is a spiral, right, of lack and safety that separates you from your bliss. And the sense of dissatisfaction becomes a weight of its own, because you cannot understand truth, because trauma hides truth within it. So it is the eating and the digesting of the trauma. It's not the avoidance of the trauma or the judging of the trauma or the deciding that the trauma was something done to you when you are a victim. When you are a victim, you are not powerful. You are powerless. And from a powerless state, whether you can see your power in your bank account or in your freedom or in your health, your abilities in your body or not, it's there in your choice. So it doesn't support healing, and therefore we see more disease come. Trust, we discussed. Resilience is diminished, making it harder to move forward. Stress causes more stress, and freeze happens. And this makes it harder because you label yourself and you surrender to that label the way that people surrender to a diagnosis from a doctor who is only telling you their prediction based on what they know, not on what's possible for you. That's your field. So proof pours in to make you right if you decide the trauma is bad and everybody else screwed you over. Okay? It pours in to bring more of the ancient wounds up instead of more of the ancient wisdom. And the agreements and the vows become burdens instead of freeing them. So we're going to unravel those, and we're going to choose our timeline, and we're going to learn how to use all these powers in order to then go into the sacred feminine realms of the subconscious, where she says, I'll create whatever you want. And that's when you learn to feel trauma free, to think trauma free, and to access higher potentials and things you can't imagine until you follow your bliss. That's when the doorway to freedom is truly there. So we're going to end with dear, dear Joseph Campbell. Let me just see. There's a bunch more here. And I do want to share, if you don't have this, I give it to you in all my classes. It's also free in the shop. And this is where you can see the state, the emotional state, the mental state, the process, the environment that you project that's reflected back to you, and the perspective that you have depending on these states. So if you see a trauma as tragic, you think it's tragic, then you're going to be despondent. Okay. When you blame yourself or others, you're going to see destruction in your world, destruction of your happiness, your health, and destruction in other people's realities. It's just the way that it works. So forgiveness is where acceptance leads you, and you don't have to work at it. It frees your emotional body. This is a power tool. All right. So Joseph, thank you, my dear friend. When you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while waiting for you. The life that you are living is the loving is the one that you're living somehow, and you can see it. You begin to deal with people who are in the field of your bliss, and they open doors to you. Follow your bliss and don't be afraid. And doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be. And those doors could lead to classes or mentors or wisdom or a video or a book or something. So Do you want to deal with people in your field of bliss or in your field of trauma? Trauma is your door to your bliss. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you on Thursday. Now I'm so glad you like the art. Thank you, Lisa. So it's very important to listen to the opportunities that come. And if you're surrendering to the voice that says, I can't right now, maybe another time, I ask you to step outside of that trauma. That's a denial trauma. Whether you join my class or not, whether you come on the retreat or not, whether you work with me personally or not, isn't the point. The point is, are you letting this definition and this perceived trauma that says, oh, I'm too weak, oh, I'm not healthy enough, oh, I don't have enough of this, or I'm not good enough at that, or whatever it is, are you willing to surrender your life to that and let it define you and make your decisions? Because manifesting and being the creator of your life means that you feel and you think the thoughts that lead you on the bliss path. You project yourself into that end result, and inside out manifesting is you're inside the end result you want, projecting the radiating out the energy to the you now. And if you can pick up and perceive those, what would I think if I already have it? How would I decide? Or how would I act? How would I choose? What would I say? What would I ask? Free yourself now. All right, everybody. Thank you. I love you. And I hope you have a beautiful and blessed day. We give great thanks to this beautiful infinity healing chamber, this place between those worlds, this community of our love and wisdom, and all of this divine light, and all of our soul, and all of our lives, and all of our wisdom, and all of our trauma. We accept and love all of us, and we accept this moment exactly as it is, and we accept our power to shift into a new timeline and to become free from trauma, deciding our life, our health, our wealth, and our happiness. Thank you, thank you, thank you. May this circle be open yet unbroken, and a clear path to all this wisdom and healing. Be here for all those who are ready to listen, to seed into the life of the planet, the waters, the earth, the soil, the trees, the moon, the star, the sun. And we call on the lion, the sphinx, and the guardians of our life, and the dragons. And we call on this portal that is open already, this portal of Sirius, our spiritual sun. We call on Isis. We call on the blue beings from Sirius. We call on all these divine energies that are here at this time to usher in this age of Aquarius, where we embrace our full unicorn, independent, individual spiritual self, and we respect equally everyone else's right to be them. We do not agree with anything that is not optimal for us, and we do not condemn anything ever. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. Ciao.